Hey, what's going on? My name is Chris Phillips, and welcome to Elevate Your Leadership podcast. This is our co-host, Adam Pelham. He's here with us today, and we are excited to be talking about all things to elevate your leadership. We have a very special guest. Time to time, we want to bring in guests, have people come in to give us information about how they lead and the elements that God has given them to lead in. And so whether that's workplace, whether that's in the home, whether that's being a mom, whether that's being a wife, whatever that may be, we want everyone to be able to elevate their leadership so other people around them can elevate their leadership. And so I am here with the wonderful, the beautiful, the fantastic, the extravagant. I can say this about this lady because she's my wife, Libby Phillips. So, hey, welcome to Elevate Your Leadership podcast. We'll get going in just a second. All right. Hey, welcome back. Man, I am so excited, Adam, for our guest today.
Come on.
You know what I love? I love when we have a guest that doesn't see themselves as like impactful leadership type of people, but everyone around them knows that they're great leaders.
Yeah.
And everyone around them sees it. And so, and honestly, there's a little bit of that. That's like, there's the humility of it, right? There's nothing worse than interviewing someone that thinks they're really good and they're telling you that they think they're really good, and they're telling you all the things that are really good. It's better to have someone that has incredible leadership ability that doesn't quite know it and grasp it, and then it just oozes out of them and everything that they do. And that would perfectly describe my wife, Libby Phillips. Libby is one of the best leaders I know. I tell a lot of people, and Adam, you've probably heard me say this 100 times, that Libby is one of the greatest leaders that I know. I say it over and over again, babe. I really do. And I tell a lot of our partners and people like that, a lot of our church members, not only are you a great wife and you lead well there, but you are an incredible mom and you lead well there. But even more so, you are an incredible leader in the workplace. And your call is what? What do you do for a living, Libby?
Yeah, so my job is in education. So my current role is a literacy instructional coach. And I do a little bit of reading intervention, working with kids who are below grade level in reading.
Yeah, and you coach. Who do you coach when you're there? Is it grade level? Is it teachers? It's all around.
So my current role is I have 8 teachers that I am coaching. I have kindergarten, first grade, and second grade literacy literacy teachers. And then I have 2 specials teachers, so PE and art. It's been a challenge.
Always been a leader. Adam, how's your literacy? She's going to check it today.
My PE was good. I don't know about my literacy back in the day.
But you, even last year and years before, you were a teacher in the classroom. You led other people. You were team leads. Leadership oozes out of you. I know that. And I think other people around you would also say that too. If you're here, you like, subscribe, and all these types of things, man, make a comment about how Libby has impacted you from a leader, because I know it's very true.
You can read those.
It is. I'll read those. Yes, she's. And if you want to tell me that I'm doing good too, you can as well. Yeah. I need that words of affirmation.
That's right.
So hey, we're gonna just jump right in, Lib. This is all about elevating your leadership. And one of the things that Adam and I talked about with this podcast was that we didn't want to just have ministry focus. We didn't want to just have pastoral focus, and all of that kind of stuff in ministry, but we wanted to bring in different people and talk about it from different elements, because no matter who you are, you have the ability to lead someone else, whether that is a mom leading her kids, whether that is a mom leading neighbors that she's engaged in, or whether that's a wife leading in areas that she can lead, in the home, or whether that's a wife and a mom that's a teacher leading in the workplace and everything as well. Everyone has the ability to lead. And when you elevate your leadership, you're elevating the leadership of the people around you too. One of the things we say a lot is the rising tide lifts all ships. And so when you are elevating your leadership there at Inspire Elementary, the people around you are getting better. And we even talked about this a little bit with some of the questions ahead of time. And so we're just going to dive right in. And Adam, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Libby, you're a mom. You are a wife. You are a teacher. What did you say?
That I am.
You're a teacher. You're a follower of Christ. You're leading in a lot of different areas and a lot of different spaces. But one of the first things I want to ask you is, how do you lead yourself? Because you are busy. And I just want to know, how do you lead yourself? What are some of the things that you do?
Yeah, I do this really well. We've kind of joked about this. I am a person that does better when I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about where we tend to drop balls is when we have nothing on our calendar.
Right.
However, I will say this is something I have to work at.
Yeah.
Because I tend to put myself last.
Yeah.
So I think one of the first things is like leaning into what fuels me.
Yeah.
And really what gives me that energy so that I can pour into others.
Yeah.
Whether that's being in the Word, and for me spiritually, if I'm going to invest into others around me, I've got to be filled myself.
Yeah.
In workplace, in the secular world, if I'm going to be able to pour into others,
Yeah.
I've got to kind of know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Right.
So,
What book are you reading? You're about to engage in a new book.
oh, I knew you'd ask me the title, and I don't know the title, but
The Coaching Habits.
it's a coaching habits book about questions. And just really, I mean, continually being a learner. I used to laugh at you for reading so much.
I was just about to ask this.
But I'm growing in my reading goals.
Yeah. And
and
can
in
you,
my podcast goals.
right?
Come on.
She's
Yeah.
listening to
I've got-
podcasts,
I've got
right?
a-
There's a good one called Elevate Your Leadership Podcast.
You should subscribe.
Host Chris Phillips, just you should subscribe and follow.
Come on.
And she probably doesn't, to be honest with you. she's not impressed.
Every
with me
click
at all.
counts, Libby. Every
And,
click counts.
And but no, you took up reading, and you and I differ on this, because I'm like, why are you reading worthless novels?
Yeah,
I
I do. I like all the rom-com.
yeah,
Oh,
right.
You know, or
What's the last book you read?
The last one was it's called See Me. It was a Nicholas Sparks
Yeah.
book.
Oh,
I like the
yeah.
romance.
Shout out Sparks.
But I like, listen, I like
Get the best night's sleep after reading some Sparks.
I do like the mystery ones. I don't know. I try and do like 3, like no mind, like just don't have to think about it. It's just mindless reading to like 1 coaching / literacy.
So like I'll give you a peek
deeper.
into the home a little bit, Adam. This is like, I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, you wanted me to read. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't want you to read stupid stuff.
Yeah,
You know, and she's like, hold on, you don't actually get to pick what I
Hey
read.
man, we're all about efficiency. So it's like, let's watch a movie that takes an hour and a half.
100
You know what I'm saying?
Listen,
But we
if-
don't agree on the
Yeah,
same movies
that's
either.
true.
That's true. Yeah.
If there's a book that's a movie, I'm not reading it.
Give me
And
an
I
hour and a
like
half,
to-
Yeah.
as
no.
opposed to a week.
No,
of
I
reading.
like to read and see the difference.
Yeah.
The books are always better.
No.
Always.
That's what they say.
No, they
I'm
are.
gonna have to believe them.
They actually
Yeah.
may be better, but they're not efficient, which makes it not better.
They cut out so much
Thank
in
you.
the movie.
Because if I'm leading, I need to be efficient. No, but what I'm saying that because you began reading, because that does fill you a little
Yeah.
bit, and so you have to have that like focus to go and do that. That's good.
Yeah, I've kind of learned that I've got to clear my mind
Yeah.
and do mindless things in order for my mind to be clear.
Well, and
to focus.
when you're go, you need that time to pause. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
Sabbath principle too, right? We need to stop and be, and some of that is doing, and rest and doing all that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this next one. You lead students, yes, as a teacher, and you have before. But the hard thing about that too is even now you're wanting to see impact in students, right, and literacy and everything else, and through the teachers. You're leading through others, right, and so that's kind of a lot of what your job is. It's not your leadership now is not directly impacted based on you. So how do you walk through leading through other people?
I think for me, leading through others is really leading with the mindset of being able to like work yourself out of a job, meaning that leading into teachers, I want them to work me out of a job. I want them to take ownership. And I also want them to in turn that towards their students. I mean, we talk about, self-advocacy and, these kind of buzzwords, but I want my students to be able to take ownership of their learning.
Yeah.
So therefore I have to teach. I want my teachers to take ownership of their learning.
That's good.
And also lead into students to take ownership.
Yeah. That's really good.
But that's been a kind of a shift, I think, in leadership as I've stepped into leading teachers, in that I can teach a kid all day long,
Yeah.
and you
Right.
don't think twice about it.
Yeah.
But when you step into teaching a peer
Yeah.
or somebody older than you,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of like second guess. But I think it's, what did I find successful when I was in their shoes?
Yeah.
But also, hey, these are suggestions. These are, pathways you can take, but you have to take ownership of your
Yeah.
own
Mm-hmm.
learning and your own teaching.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, go for it.
I love that mindset of teaching out of your job, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about it before, like the 80% rule.
Yeah.
If somebody that you are leading and training can do your job 80% as good as you can, let
Yeah.
them have it. Let
Yeah.
them run with
Yeah.
it. And if you have that mindset of we've talked about it before too, like, hey, whatever job you're in interim technically.
Yeah.
You're not going to be there forever. I know
Yeah.
we like to think that sometimes in our jobs.
Yeah.
But when we have that mindset, I think you're able to let some of that go.
Yeah.
And equip others and around you to do that. That's
Yeah.
great.
I first
love
heard Anna Stanley say it. If someone can do it as 80% as effective as you can, then you need to give that over to them.
Yeah.
Because you can do something that other people can't do 80% effective.
Right.
And when you're doing those types of things, you're getting bogged down in the minutia and in the weeds of stuff that doesn't allow you to lead at the highest level that you can in the things that only you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I've got a problem with that because I don't like to delegate. It's easier for me to do it than it is to delegate it and walk it through. And so I've had to make sure, I think you would probably agree that you're the same way.
Yeah.
You're a doer.
Working on that.
You're a doer. And so now, you can't even be a doer as much because you're based on the effectiveness of the classrooms of the teachers that you're coaching, right? That's kind of like how the classroom has to improve, but it's not through your direct leadership.
Mm-hmm.
It's through your leadership, through the teachers that you're hoping to get them to do it. And this morning you said three things when we were talking about this. You said that as you lead through others, you have to let them observe.
Oh, yeah. What all did I say?
Yeah.
Some of the things that we do in the classroom, like in the in schools, is just observe. I've got to get in there and see what teachers are successful at, maybe where they need support with. And then after that comes at different levels, but modeling.
Yeah.
Whether, if I've got a brand new teacher that just hasn't seen it. So much of teaching is experience and trying things out. So modeling, and then it really goes back into observing, back into our coaching cycle, observing again.
Yeah.
And really going back, and that's where we can pull in the questions, of, trial and error. What felt successful?
Yeah.
What felt challenging
And
with this?
You even use the word support. So you said observe.
Support.
Yeah, you said observe, model, support, and that's really good. That'll preach. You can observe something. It's the ministry of presence. Like you got to be there.
Right.
I can't lead you if I don't even know what you're doing.
Right.
So I got to observe and be there with you. Then I need to model it. This is what Jesus did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said, "Hey, watch me."
Yeah.
That was it. Follow me, watch
Yeah.
me, and they were getting to, model what he was doing. And then he moved to a model to support, right? He literally said, watch me. Then he went to a model of, I'm going to help you help me. Then he went to a model of, I'm going to help you. And then he went to a model of, I'm going to watch you and support you and help you in that way. And that's really, that's a principle. It's funny, no matter what sphere you're in, we can talk about leadership all we want. You can be a follower of Jesus or not. We're still talking about the man 2,000 years later, right? We as a world celebrate, his birth year after year, around the Christmas season and all of that kind of stuff. We, talk about him. There's leadership principles that no matter what your faith background is, you can see he had a great leadership principle. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna then observe and by supporting you in this type of way. And walk alongside of you. Okay. Can I ask you a question? This one's pretty hard.
Hard questions.
It's not like super hard, but it's a little bit hard. You're like teaching is in a government system. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things outside of your control. Mm-hmm. In ministry, we would say like leading from the second chair or the third chair, or the fourth chair, meaning that like the buck doesn't stop with you. Mm-hmm. And so not only are you in a system where you have principles, system principles, all these things, but you're in a system where there's a overarching, process and organizational structure to go through. Yeah. So you're leading from a lot of chairs down. how do you do that? And like, how do you handle the difficulties in that where you want to do some things, but you maybe can't just because that's not a systemic thing that you can do within the structures that you're in? Like, how do you walk through that?
Yeah. So I think this is a harder question. I think relationships matter.
Yeah.
Within this, I think building relationships within my systems.
That's good.
Within my school, within my district.
Yeah.
Knowing, and I think also knowing the systems.
Yeah. That's really good.
Knowing where I can push.
Yeah.
And also that goes back to, one of the things is I have to be confident in myself in what drives me, especially when it comes in the workplace where faith butts up against culture, against secular, and just knowing my system, being confident in that, knowing these systems that I'm up against, so I know where things may be challenging.
Yeah.
And then I think relationships matter with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think a lot of times, you have to question, like, is this a hill to die on?
Yeah.
I think in the education world, it's ever changing systems.
Yeah.
So I think that is one thing that works out in your favor is that, systems are kind of always changing with new research. And, I think of new systems right now where with literacy, it's this whole new research on how the brain actually learns to read.
Yeah.
And we're learning that the ways that we've taught reading and how you and I learn to read is not actually how our brains learn best.
Stop.
So our whole systems are changing.
Don't Common Core me right now.
This is past Common Core.
2 + 2 = 4.
That's right.
Because there's 4 that are there.
There's 2 ones and then there's 2 ones that you're adding.
Stop. Yeah, it's just
no,
carry.
we don't carry.
No, carry.
That's
Carrying
simple
is
Carry.
algorithm.
20 + 20. It's 2. Go. And then let's go 90 plus 50. You carry it over. Stop with your Common Core stuff.
Common Core. But I do think, honestly, because systems are ever changing, knowing the systems and then knowing my own systems and knowing where they're going to come head to head.
The systems change as we find, part of that, like I see my kids using different methods than I used and they get it. And I'm like, whatever. That's not how this goes. But they get it. And it's because we're made unique, right?
Yeah.
We're made uniquely. We're made in different ways. And okay, that's there.
Yeah.
Adam, you got the next one?
Yeah. I've been really excited for this episode too, because I have always had a respect and affinity for teachers. I look back even, in my childhood and growing up in high school and stuff, like all of my mentors were teachers, right? Yeah. And I think the reason I really gravitate towards teachers is because they see the best in their students, right? Yeah. All of my favorite teachers saw the best in me and in my peers and stuff. And we had, relationships. Even when I was like, graduated high school and stuff, and in college, I had teachers still reach out and check in and stuff like that.
By the way, another Jesus principle.
Yeah.
Knows the worst, but looks to your best.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
And so with that, I think you have to, as a teacher or as somebody that works with kids or the next generation, you have to look into the pros of those generations, right? And so what is something that you've seen in this new generation? Are we still dealing with Gen Z at this age right there? Are they even a new one?
We don't even
Gen,
know. Yeah, we don't know.
I was going to say.
We don't have a name.
Because I tell you what, Gen Z, man, they got some bright spots ahead, but also they terrify me.
Coming from
as a millennial that's scared of everything.
You're literally like a year older than Gen Z.
I know. And so
you're like
I'm millennial on the cutoff.
You're like a zennial.
Yeah. So with that, what about this next generation that you are seeing each and every day? What are some things that excite you the most about them?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. One of the things that makes me the most excited is just resiliency. We can talk about COVID all day long, but I do think one of the positive things that is coming out of where we are and where we've been over the last 3 years is resiliency. We've learned to be creative.
Yeah.
We've learned to use resources on what we've got. And I think just even teaching in the thick of things, with kids 6 feet apart and mask and like having to make all the changes. I mean, you name it, we changed it in the classroom. But I think there was still a joy in learning. And I think we just learned that kids are resilient. Like they will persevere. That's kind of like this buzzword in education, but teaching that, you know, asset-based learning and perseverance, and that like it does take effort.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things, if I look back over like 10 years that was so hard, is we kind of lost this like effort and this perseverance, and that's coming back.
I mean, it's going to be a little bit like the Great Depression era, like, you know, where you have those people that made it through, right? And talk about how hard that is.
Yeah, who knows 10 years from now looking back.
I mean, these, like, hey, do you remember how difficult this was? You know? And,
but I think, you know, what's neat about kids at this age is they don't think, oh, you remember how hard it was? They're like, remember what we did?
Yeah, you remember Mom and Dad actually like took me on walks and stuff. Mom and Dad were home.
My parents were around.
But
so I think, you know, it's like, what do you do when you're faced with, like, you know, at that point, the worst of the worst is kind of what we thought. Like, so what do? You know, your back's against the wall. So I think that's something, you know, I think this generation is finding joy in things that maybe we didn't find joy in, the resiliency, the perseverance. I think that's
follow up to that. Like, what do you think kids can teach us?
A lot. That's probably one of my favorite things about teaching is what kids can teach us.
Oh man.
But
you tell me I need to start hanging around more kids.
I've learned that one, and Adam, this goes back to kind of what you said a second ago, like relationships truly matter.
Yeah.
That is key in education. Relationships. And that's one of my favorite things. But when you truly get to know all of your students or all of your kids that you're working with, they like light up, and they're just more willing to open up. And that's where you learn, you know, just all the little things. And not only can all of my kids now teach me more technology than I ever knew. I mean, that's Phillips. Like, did you know it does this? Nope, sure didn't. Didn't know. But I mean, I just think that like their outlook, kids have no filter, and that is a beautiful thing sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's really funny,
right?
But it's also a beautiful thing when they see things differently, from a different lens.
And you know, here's the thing. Not only do they have no filter, which is good because we put a filter on because of our perception, which is really identity issues that we have, right? Yeah. It's like, who are we rooted in our identity? Well, the kids don't care because their identity is not set in what the world thinks of them or what the neighbors think of them or what anybody else. So we're not as transparent because our identity issues. But then they also have no fear, right? Yeah. And so they don't, hey man, they, you know, okay, I serve a big God, I can do whatever. You know, I look at even our kids when we moved to Denver, you know, to come out here, like they're bold in their invitation to people to come to, you know Christ, to come to church activities, to come to all these things. And I meet followers of Christ that are like 30 years, you know, plugged into a local church somewhere. And it's like, hey, when's the last time you invited someone in? Wow, you know, they may think something different. And I'm looking at my like 13-year-old and he's like, talking to his bus driver when we move here, you know. I mean, I'll never forget it. We come and he's like, he hands me a piece of paper. Like we're literally here for months. And he hands me a piece of paper. He's like, hey Dad, this is the bus. No, it was a year. We were here a year. He hands me a piece of paper, says, this is my bus driver's number. Can you call her to invite her to church? I was like, how did you get your bus driver's number? And he said, well, I mean, you always talk about inviting people in, you know, to being a follower of Jesus and all this kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, but like, okay, how did you get your bus driver's number? He's like, well, I was just talking to her. She looked like she was having a bad day. So I sat up front and I started.
She was a new bus driver.
She was a new bus driver. Where to go. So I was telling her what to do and where to go.
And in Central Park, the roads are always shaped. Like there's always new roads.
And so he was sitting there and he said, hey, do you live like a church home anywhere? And she was like, no. She was like, you know, I went to church a couple times when I was young, but they didn't want me back because I did some things that they probably wouldn't be accepting of. He was like, hey, listen. And she was talking about what she wore. And so she said, well, you know, I wore some stuff and they were like a super conservative type stuff. Yeah. And he said, well, I'm pretty sure my dad doesn't care what you wear. And he's pastor of Journey Point Church. And if you want to come in and do that, you can. And he gets her number that we can invite her in.
No fear, baby.
I was like, man, No fear, no filter.
That's it.
And so there you
Yeah.
go. That's what we can learn from kids of today.
I
No
used to
fear,
joke.
no
I used
filter.
to joke that when we would go to the playground, every single time, if you watch kids, they like instantly make new friends.
Yeah.
So it's like you move in this new environment, and it's
Right.
like, how do you meet new friends? Watch your kids at the playground.
Perfect.
Yeah.
They give
Perfect
you
love.
all the example.
Yeah.
Perfect love drives out fear.
For
right?
sure.
When we have that relationship with Jesus, we should have the same thing. No fear. Talk to anybody.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think this goes into a little bit of our last question as well.
Yeah.
Like we talked about the kids and the pure hearts that they really have and the intentions. And I think sometimes, and I'm the student director here at our Journey Point location, so I work with this as well a little bit with students and their relationships with their parents or adults and stuff like that. Sometimes it's not the kids that are the issue. It sometimes might be the parents or the guardians or things like that.
Just
and
not one of my kids.
Sometimes the adults are the ones that are acting like kids more than the kids are, you know. And so how do you navigate dealing with maybe parents who are hard to serve or supervisors or guardians or whoever it is, right? That might be a little bit hard to serve. How do you have that posture to serve them well in the midst of them kind of being hard sometimes?
Yeah, I think this goes back a little bit what we talked about earlier, but with relationships mattering. I don't know that that's really where relationships that matter.
Yeah.
I like it.
But, I think that's first, really being intentional to get to know parents ahead of time, whether that's like my class parents or just a new parent that walks into the door. Now I deal with, a lot more parents. But, I think being intentional, asking questions. I think the other thing, and this helps because I am a parent, but I constantly try and put myself in their shoes.
Yeah.
So if it's a difficult conversation of a student behavior, let's say in our classroom, really trying to think of like, if this were my kid, how would I want the teacher to approach me? Or how would I want a parent to talk to me?
It's good.
I think being real and transparent and honest, even when it's hard and your palms are kind of sweaty. I kind of
knees
joke.
weak.
I know knees weak. I kind of joke with Chris when my palms get sweaty and I get nervous.
Yeah.
That I'm just delegate, but I'm like the world's worst delegator. So this doesn't really. I can't really pass it on to somebody else. But I think building those relationships first. So when it gets hard, it's not as hard.
Yeah.
And inevitably you're going to have relationships, that are difficult and challenging. And I think when it comes to that, no matter what, putting myself in their shoes, and really walking through how I would hope that it was done to me.
Yeah.
And I think honesty, I've learned, early on as a teacher and educator, when you sugarcoat things, it just doesn't pan out well.
For sure.
And so not that, I'm going to only say the bad things. We kind of joke about like the positive sandwich, it's like positive, negative, positive.
I'm going to give you a positive bun and then throw that negative meat.
Yeah.
And
I don't do that well.
That's like a real thing.
Yeah.
But I'm also not going to sugarcoat. And I think, really honestly, it goes back to a little bit of the observing thing that we talked about earlier. If I've observed and I have concrete, factual data or evidence, the data doesn't lie. And so it takes out the feelings of me. Where my feelings can come in is how I'm approaching parents, what I'm saying. But the data is factual.
That's so good.
Truth bombs.
Yeah.
Observe, model, support. Leaders cannot delegate hard situations. And be honest. Truth bombs.
Come on.
Libby's like, I'm not a leader.
I'm not a great recap.
I'm not a leader. I can't do this. Right.
That's exactly why you're a leader.
Observe.
Because of that right there.
Model, support. Leaders can't delegate hard situations.
Yeah.
Be honest at
That's
all
so
times.
good. I love
Come
that.
on.
And you do have to put yourself in their shoes, right? And at the end of the day, parents want what's best for their kid. And I think too, it's like, hey, like
don't sugarcoat it to me.
Yeah.
Tell me the truth.
Right. And I think as teachers too, it's like, man, you get 7-8 hours with their kid, whereas they're getting off work at 5:30. Right. They're only getting 2-3 hours in the evenings, and their kids got to go to bed. So I'm not a parent yet, but I could see that of like, okay, my kid is spending a lot of time with these teachers in this environment, way more than me, maybe even I am. Right. Yeah. And so I can see where that trust can you got to build that relationship with them to say, hey, I got you. Right. Yeah. I'm leading your kids in the right way. I'm teaching them well.
And I think
work
too,
together on this.
When you work hard not only to make the relationship with the parent, but you work hard to make the relationship with the kid, you've earned that
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
a certain
right.
degree. Like the kid respects you, you know, the parent respects you. When a child comes home as a parent and talks about their teacher and what they love
Yeah.
and that they know their teacher,
Yeah.
I know that that teacher has invested
And them.
all of themselves into my kid, and I know that that teacher has my kid's best interest at heart. And so when things arise, it's not as hard because it's not teacher against parent.
Yeah.
It is, I know that they're on my side as well, and yeah, they see them a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
You know, in the classroom.
Right.
Hey,
Hey,
I want to tell you something.
yeah,
I'm not saying this because you're my wife.
yes, you are.
I'm not.
You are.
I'm saying this because game recognizes game. You're one of the greatest leaders I know.
Thanks, love.
You need to know that. You need to lean into that. You need to embrace it. You're one of the greatest leaders I know.
I'll lean back out of that.
No, I'm kidding, man. Game recognizes game. Hey, thank you for joining us for Elevate Your Leadership Podcast. Libby Phillips, crushing it. Until next time. See you then.